Today I'd like to share why I'm voting for Ron Paul and why you should too. Ron Paul earned my trust back in 2007 when I was reading about him on MySpace, and I read that he had never voted to raise his own congressional income. So at that moment I decided this is a man that I want to read more about. So this led me into many articles about Ron Paul and turned me into the Ron Paul supporter that I am today. First thing is Ron Paul wants to end the Federal Reserve Bank or the Central Bank of America that prints all the money that we use on a day-to-day basis. And his reasoning for that is because it is unconstitutional, and on top of all of that, it causes inflation, breaks down the currency, and it's just unhealthy for an economy to have money backed up by debt and to be able to create it out of thin air. I'm a proponent of, I like silver and gold and everything like that because in history it's proven to be a great form of currency. However, I'm a proponent of whatever the populace chooses to make the currency, whatever the market wants the currency to be. And as of right now, just because of the trust that this unfortunate trust that we have in the dollar, we're left with a fiat currency and a fiat system, which, as you can all see, is breaking down right before our very eyes. Another reason why I support Ron Paul is I heard a speech from him at CPAC, and don't judge me for going to CPAC, in 2010, where he asked the crowd, how would you feel about opting out of Social Security? Just like any government service, I believe if you put in, you should be able to take out. So opting in or out of Social Security would be awesome because I personally would opt out and take care of my own future in a private manner. Another wonderful thing about Ron Paul is that he values free speech. In days like today where people are censored in other countries and you can't speak out against government, it becomes kind of scary, and you think of movies like V for Vendetta and things like that where people live in a place where you can't speak your mind. And for my future and for my children's future, I want to support a candidate that wholeheartedly supports the First Amendment when it comes to press, religion, and just your day-to-day life. You should be able to talk about whatever you want, just about wherever you want. And like Ron Paul says, we don't have free speech to talk about the weather. Ron Paul doesn't believe that the federal government should define what marriage is, and I support that as well. I used to be a conservative and came to the libertarian viewpoint and really saw a lot of logic in his argument about how the government people are sitting here fighting with the government on whether gays should be allowed to be married or not. And in this situation, I'm thinking to myself, why on earth are you going to the government and begging them for your permission? And I understand there's tax benefits and things like that should be allowed for all couples. However, that goes to an even bigger issue on how the IRS probably shouldn't exist, but I won't go into that today. But I do support Ron Paul's logic when it comes to not defining marriage with the federal government. And he does say that leave it to the states, and a lot of people argue, once we start leaving everything to the states, slavery is going to return. Gays are going to be banished from many places. And I can wholeheartedly disagree with those theories because I believe in the free market, and in states where things like that could even possibly get to that extent again, I believe a lot of people wouldn't live there. I believe the economy would suffer. And even if it didn't and there was this bigoted state somewhere, I'm not sure exactly what would happen, but so be it. Live and let live. If someone's a racist bastard, let them be a racist bastard as long as they're not harming you. Once they're harming you, inflicting any sort of aggression towards you, that's whenever I believe you should be able to do something about it. So I already touched on this a little bit about the free market, and Ron Paul is a huge proponent of the free market. He talks about it in just about every speech you can hear, especially when he refers to the bank bailouts. Why on earth are we bailing out these businesses that are performing so poorly and putting it on the taxpayer when the bad businesses should fall so the good businesses can arise. Another reason why I support Ron Paul is that Ron Paul is pro-life. Yes, he is pro-life. Not only does he talk about it for financial reasons, but he also talks about it from a humanitarian way of thinking. We are based in over 140 countries right now across the world, and it sickens me to think what happens to the civilians in those countries when we decide we want to ship our military there to show them how democracy should be. And one great thing about Ron Paul is that he makes a lot of sense with his speeches, in his writings, his interviews, and on stage in the debates. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I get aggravated listening to Herman Cain and his ABC list that I really, really hope that people stop eating up, because there's no substance within that. And Ron Paul he uses words, he uses vocabulary that really explains what's going on with the economy, that really explains what's going on with foreign policy, and he really gets down to the deep part of civil liberty issues like the Patriot Act. I mean, he's name-dropping legislation while he's up on stage. What other candidate in the GOP primary is doing that right now? So I'd like to thank Ron Paul for being such an eloquent speaker from my perspective. And yes, he's an older man compared to Obama, and I'm sorry he might not be as good looking, but he makes a hell of a lot more sense. And finally, I would just like to say that my women's intuition tells me that voting for Ron Paul is a positive thing for me to do right now. So I'm following my gut on this one, and I really encourage all of you to look more into Ron Paul and read as much as you can before the elections, because I promise you, you won't be disappointed. And even if it's not everything you want in a candidate, it's going to be, I can almost guarantee, the best we can do at this point in time. So if you decide to agree with me today and vote for Ron Paul, I encourage you to go to your town hall and register as a Republican or an independent so you can vote in the primaries and vote for Ron Paul. If you're a registered Democrat, you won't be able to vote for Ron Paul in the primaries. So please go get that done so we can win this and get the nomination and turn this vote around. So thank you all for listening, and let's do this.
The revolution, the revolution, the revolution. We take them back home, we take them back home.